Hi friends, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and my friend Ling and I are here today to talk to you about a really special author that we're super excited about because he just recently came out with a new book, and I thought this would be a really great time to talk about not only the new book, but also his previous works as well. So the author that we're going to be talking about today is Amor Towles, and I'm just going to show you real quick his new book, The Lincoln Highway, which you may or may not have heard of. It's getting a lot of buzz right now. I just finished it last week, absolutely fell in love with it, but I didn't expect anything less from this author. So I'm actually going to start with his oldest book and then go up to this newest one. There's only 3 so far that he's written. So one of the things that I really love about him, this author, is that he writes so differently with each of his stories. So each of his stories takes place in a different time period. They take place in a different setting, and it's just a completely different feel each story has. And I love that about him because you never know what you're going to get when you go into one of his books, but you do know that you're going to love it. So his very first book is called Rules of Civility. Now, this is not the first book of his that I read. I actually came back to this one after I read the book I'm going to talk about next. But this is his first published works, The Rules of Civility. And it takes place in New York in the late 1930s. And it's about this young woman named Katie who happens to come across in this jazz bar one night this really, really affluent bachelor named Tinker. And he is not anybody she has ever expected to come into a close relationship with, but she does. And because of that meeting, this book takes place basically within a year. The majority of the book is within a year's time, and it's their relationship and everything that comes out of it and all the tumultuous things that happen. But really, it is a book about New York City. It is New York City in the high society areas and in the 30s. And I think with his books, like I said, they're all really different. They're all very evocative of the time period that they're written in. But you just really feel almost like the setting is its own character, and I love that. So if you love 1930s culture, especially in New York City, American New York City, you will absolutely go bananas over this book. And I do love those things. F. Scott Fitzgerald is one of my favorite authors, and this book is kind of reminiscent in that, although very different in a lot of ways as well. So Rules of Civility, Amor Towles' first book. So his next book is actually the one that introduced me to him. I had not heard of him before I read this book, and because of that, I didn't know what to expect going into it, so I had no expectations at all. He blew me away with the story. This story is one of the best stories I think ever written. It's just so fantastic, and has now just set the bar really high for his writing, for me at least now. So this next one is called A Gentleman in Moscow. I'm sure you've heard of this, or if you haven't, you should run out right now and read it because it is fantastic. Again, like I said, very different from his first book. This takes place in the 20s in Russia. And the main character is Count Alexander. And in the beginning of the book, he is being tried by the Bolsheviks, basically, because he's an aristocrat. And he is living an aristocratic lifestyle, so they sentence him to a very interesting sentence. So he is actually sentenced to house arrest in this big, glorious, beautiful hotel that's right across the street from the Kremlin. And he has to live there for the rest of his life. He cannot leave this hotel. And he can't stay in one of the lavish rooms like that he's used to. He has to go and stay in the attic. So most of his possessions are gone. The only things he can keep are what he can fit in the attic. So he has to go, kind of scramble to figure out what he wants to hold on to. And basically this story is the story of his life after that point, and all the people he comes to meet and befriend and have relationships with that live in this hotel. Some become more monumental than others. He meets this little girl, this young girl that he ends up having to save, which becomes a big part of the heart of this story. This is not a book I would have ever thought that I would love as much as I do. I do love books that were written in the 20s and 30s, like I said, but this is just This book has so much heart and so much character. You will just fall in love with this count like I did and like so many other people have. It's absolutely phenomenal. I love this book so much. Like I said, it was the first one I read by him. You can start here with his works. You don't have to necessarily read them in order. I happen to think personally this is my favorite of his books, and I think this is his best one so far. But again, that just might be because I went into this with no expectations, so it blew me away. And now I kind of hold this author to a high standard. So everything he's written is great. This is personally, I think, his best one, A Gentleman in Moscow. Even if you're not interested in things that happened in Russia in the 20s, I guarantee you're going to love this book. You're going to love it. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I haven't yet met a person who hasn't loved this book. Gentleman in Moscow. So, getting back to his brand new book, which just recently came out, The Lincoln Highway. Again, completely different setting, completely different feel. This is set in the 1950s in rural America. It actually takes place in a couple different locations, but it starts off with this Midwestern boy named Emmett who is just getting out of this reform camp. Through some bad circumstances, he ended up committing this crime. Didn't mean to, but it happened. So now he's coming home, and all he wants to do is start over with his younger brother. His dad has passed away. His mom ran away when the boys were young. So there isn't anybody left but him and his younger brother named Billy. And that's all Emmett wants to do is just start over, basically. He has this dream of, crossing the country with him and starting over in a brand new place. But before that plan can be enacted, he discovers that two of his friends, we'll say friends, from this reform camp school that he was at have actually escaped and followed him and have a different idea of what they want to be doing now and have an idea for a different trip, a completely different trip of following the Lincoln Highway, which is this railroad that goes across the country. And they have a little map of it here. So this book is also takes place, I say also, it's sort of like Rules of Civility in that the time period is not that long, unlike Gentleman in Moscow, which takes place over this count's lifetime, basically. The Lincoln Highway takes place in just a couple of weeks, and it's basically this road trip story of complete shenanigans and mishaps and all kinds of crazy things that happen. The two friends that have escaped, one, his name's Duchess, and his other companion named Wooly, and they are just characters. Let me just say that. They are absolutely wonderful, completely interesting people, fully realized, fully developed, just amazing. So you will not only care so much about Emmett and Billy, but you're also going to love Wooly and Duchess as well. You're going to love to hate Duchess anyway. So I love this book. This is a huge book. It's almost 600 pages. Do not let that daunt you, though, because it is not that slow of a read. I got through it in a couple days, and that not just because I read fast, because I couldn't put it down. It's really engaging story, absolutely wonderful. Very evocative of 1950s America. So many different things. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. It was amazing. So again, another one that's just highly, highly fantastic. I absolutely recommend get on the list for this and read it as soon as you can because it's amazing. And then I want you to come in and tell me about it so I can talk to you guys about what you liked, what you didn't like, all the above. So that's the author and his books that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that some of them sound really interesting if you haven't read them before. If so, like I said, come in, get them from Farmington Community Library, and then come in and talk to me about them. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much, my friends, and have a wonderful rest of the day.